Hi, everybody. This is Noelle from Petitti Garden Centers, and we are going to do a spotlight on one of our favorite tropical flowering plants, foliage and flowering plants. It's called a Peace Lily, or what we refer to fondly as a spath or a Spathiphyllum Peace Lily. So these are great tropical houseplants. You're probably very familiar with them and have seen them around. They are often plants that are given as gifts. They are symbols of peace, of course, of purity, and also of sympathy. So you will see them around and at different occasions. But I will have to tell you, the best thing about this plant is it is one of the easiest plants to take care of as far as foliage houseplants. And it really does not require a lot of light. And in Northeast Ohio, when it's winter, sometimes we don't get very bright days. And so therefore, this plant does really, really well indoors for us. So with our spotlights, we're going to talk about how to take care of this plant and all the good things that you need to know to succeed with Peace Lily. And it'll be a good one. So I wanted to start out to say Spathiphyllum space, that beginning of its botanical name, actually means spoon or blade. So it's referring to the actual flower here. This flower is very unique to this family of plants, and peace lilies are in the arum or aroid family, and we've talked about them before. They are relatives to philodendrons, pothos, caladiums, alocasias, anthuriums. So there's a lot of plants that you have seen that you may be familiar with. They fall into that same category. What's great about that is all of those families, they all produce a similar type flower. And so with the peace lily, you have these flowers come up. They are fairly free flowering, so they'll just produce them ever so often, sporadically throughout the growing season. And in the middle, this flowering apparatus here is called a spadix. And then, of course, it is protected by this bract or leaf that is sort of spoon-shaped or blade-shaped, and that is your spathe, okay? So that's how it gets its name, from that true flowering apparatus. What's cool is that these tropical plants are really native to more tropical areas. Makes sense. So Mexico, Central and Southern America, for the most part, in those areas, they were discovered. I read one article that said in 1824, they were discovered in Colombia, and it looked like, a glade of white flags surrendering, which I thought was kind of cool. And they also are known, a common name as white sails too. So if you ever see a white sails plant, you'll know they're talking about the peace lily or the Spathiphyllum. So with this plant, again, let's talk about light and all those conditions that it will do well with. Light, if you want to grow this plant just for their beautiful foliage, this, very bold textured, green, glossy foliage. Sometimes you'll see the green as a very dark color, a dark hunter green. Sometimes you'll see it a little bit lighter. It has maybe a lighter green or medium green tone to it. You'll see all different colors. But in lower light levels, they do fabulously. So you can put them in dark hallways, dark corners, anywhere where you have low light levels. And this plant, foliage-wise, will be beautiful for you, okay? In order to keep the peace lilies blooming and continue to produce those white flowers, they do require medium indirect light. So now you need to move them into an area where it's kind of in the middle of a bright room, okay? If you were to move this plant into bright indirect light or direct sun. So closer to windows where you are getting some direct sunlight through, you will notice that the foliage will start to yellow and quite possibly burn. So they do not want to have direct sunlight at all. They can stay in bright indirect light, but you will probably see some fading and yellowing on them. They really prefer to be in that medium indirect lighting. So like 6 to 8 feet away from a bright window, okay? Or that dark, low light area. So kind of in a darker space where you just have enough light to read a book by, okay? So those are really the lighting areas that they want to be in. And that's great because we can use them, especially in Northeast Ohio in the winter when it's darker. Okay, so let's move on to their watering. This plant is really cool, and it has its own, if you will, its own built-in water meter, okay? So these plants like to be evenly moist to slightly dry. And the whole key is when they do dry slightly and you let them go and you let them get on that slightly drier side, they will wilt, okay? When I was reading about these plants and researching a little bit, some people call that they're fainting. And so the Peace Lilies will just kind of wilt a little bit. You'll see the foliage go down. You'll see the flowering kind of flop a little bit. And you go and you thoroughly water that soil base. We always talk about doing that twice. Thoroughly water with, I like to use room temperature water. So fill up your watering can or what have you the night before. Let it just settle on the counter, and then next day go ahead and thoroughly water. So thoroughly water, moisten that soil, let the water drain out of the bottom, just like we always talk about, and then do it one more time, thoroughly moisten the soil and let the water drain out of the bottom, okay? And these plants recover really quickly. If you were to let them dry out so they're, really floppy, you thoroughly water them, and they bounce back fairly readily, okay? So we always want you, when taking care of your Peace Lily and watching the water, always keep it on the drier side. Here's the reason why. Because if you overwater, they will flop again, and you think, oh my gosh, they're dry. And then you water again, and you're just making the situation worse. And now the root system is just, really, really wet. You might see some fungus gnats flying around and you think, what did I do wrong? It was kind of the opposite condition there, okay? So always stick your finger in the water, in the soil, 2 knuckles deep, test that water, pick up the plant, okay? And if it feels heavy because there's plenty of moisture in that soil, don't water it, okay? So again, try to get it to that drier side where it's just starting to show a little bit of wilting, and it will recover really nicely when it's thoroughly watered. I should mention that they do very, very well if you want to bottom water them as well. So if you place your plant in a saucer, okay, and go ahead and water from the bottom so they can absorb that water from their root base, they do well with that too, okay? So both ways work very nicely. As far as, let's move from watering to humidity. Again, they're leafy tropical plants. So they do love their humidity, especially in winter when our houses are more dry, or you have this plant in the office, because they do really well in office spaces too. It's just a drier circulated air. And so we don't usually have a lot of humidity. So of course, you can place them on a humidity tray. So that drip tray can be filled with about 1 inch of gravel or small stones. Fill that tray up with water just to the top of the stones and let that water naturally evaporate around the plant. You can also spray mist them. Do that in the morning so that they can utilize that water throughout the day. Or just put your humidifier on them and let them be happy, and they would really, really like that. So do pay attention to that humidity, especially during winter. Okay, Let's talk about soil really quick. They use just regular all-purpose potting soil, okay, or potting mix. As long as it has a lot of organic matter, which most of your potting soils do, they do very, very well. Just make sure that it's well drained, that it will continue to kind of let that water percolate through naturally, okay? And again, you don't want them to stay wet. That's not a good thing. Next thing I think is feeding. And to be honest, in the winter, we don't recommend feeding most of your tropical houseplants. So let's say end of March through September, or April through September, that's a normal time to feed foliage and flowering houseplants. And it's because the day length is obviously getting longer. We're moving into spring at that time, and these plants are ready to wake up out of their dormancy, and they're really ready to go ahead and be productive and start growing. And so that's when you want to feed them. So we often recommend Osmocote, the pink cap Osmocote. It is one application. It lasts 6 months usually with your houseplants, and it works really well for Peace Lily. So do look for that. What else should we mention? Probably pruning and just obvious care. So the Peace Lily themselves have such large foliage when they get a little bit bigger that they will be dusty, okay, or gather dust. And it has to do with their air purification qualities. They really are good air purifiers in the home, and again, in those medium to low light places, which is nice. So we'll shove them in corners, in the living room and let them go for a little while. And then when you walk over after a month or so and you go, oh boy, there's quite a bit of dust on there. So take a soft cloth, a little bit of moisture, and just go ahead and wipe them down. Make sure that they continue to be able to air purify for you. And of course, you will see, removing that dust will, of course, benefit the plant. The foliage will look so much better. And that's always a good thing to look out for. If you see on their leaves come to a nice point. Sometimes you will see that they are brown at the tips. Browning at the tips usually means there's either a lack of humidity or that we're keeping them a little bit too dry, letting them go too dry, and then doing an irrigation to recover. So do watch out for that too. It could mean that they are getting too close to a sunny area as well and drying out. It could mean that they're a little bit closer to, let's say, a vent, somewhere where they're getting like hot drafts. That might be an issue as well. So look out for that and those dry tips, okay? If you have foliage that just doesn't look good, it's really not a problem with Peace Lilies to go down to the base of the foliage and literally just take, I was going to try to pull this out for Taylor. You can literally go down to the base of the foliage and either take some sharp, clean pruners or scissors and go ahead and remove it at the base. If you were having an issue, you had some yellow leaves here and there, go ahead and remove those, okay? With the flower itself, the flower will last anywhere from, let's say, 10 days all the way to a month. And so these flowers do last a long time. They will come out, here's a newer one, they'll come out just slightly creamy white. They will open up, okay? So you can see the spadix inside there. And the bracts is gonna open up for them. And then it'll come out, there'll be a nice white. And as they start to fade, they kind of turn more greenish. So I'm gonna show you that one in the back. So this is an older flower in the back, but they will go through those color stages, okay? There's nothing wrong with leaving an older flower on the stem. But again, after about a month or so, you'll probably see it start to dry and possibly brown, and it is ready to get cut back. So what do you do at that time? These plants are really neat, and I've always enjoyed showing folks that you actually separate, if I can get to it, Taylor, I'm so sorry. You separate the flower from the leaf. So the flower petiole here, okay, it's stem. You separate it from the leaf, and they kind of live inside the leaves here. And then you go down as low as you can. And I'm not going to do this. Even though this flower is brand new, I'm going to do it. And you try to pull it out from the base. And when you do that, the base here for the Peace Lily, this is an active growing point. So if you just yank the flower out as low as you can go, it will actually produce more cells in the plant at the base of that leaf, and that's what will activate more flowering growth for you, okay? So don't necessarily cut them. See if you can try to separate them from the leaf and then pull them out, and that does very, very well as far as stimulating more growth, more flowers for you, okay? Couple different varieties that you will see out at the garden centers and greenhouses and things. Obviously, the one I'm standing by. So this is your standard Spathiphyllum Wallace eye, okay? So it was discovered by a man named Wallace, and so there you go. You get, in the botanical name, you get his name as well, so Wallace eye. And these can be tiny little peace lilies. Sometimes you'll find them in mixed tropical arrangements. Sometimes you'll see them, they can grow up to 5 foot tall, okay? So the standard Wallace eye in a 4-inch pot is going to be probably no more than a foot tall. But of course, the bigger the pot you get, the bigger the plant is going to fill out. And I should have mentioned that these plants can tolerate being a little bit tight and root bound in their pots. They will do very well, but you'll notice that as the roots start taking up the soil, it's harder and harder to water them, keep them moist. They're going to be wilting more and all those types of things. So just be aware of that they might be a little bit root bound, and that's okay. But when they are really, really root bound and tightly packed in there, it's time to repot them with, again, some well-drained potting mix and go ahead and move them up to the next size pot. And this actually, I'm going to talk about this one too, but this one's pretty root bound, and they're very active growers. So they will tolerate, they will produce a lot of roots. They will tolerate being root bound, but again, there's a lot of roots there and not a lot of soil there, okay? And actually, late winter is a really good time to repot too. So keep that in mind when, with basically all of your tropical house plants. So keep that in mind and get your repotting supplies and your pots and all those good things, and that'll be really nice. We also have a video about, and where I'm showing you how to divide and repot houseplants, but I was using a Peace Lily. So it's an oldie but goodie, but check that one out too if you are just kind of wondering how to go through that process. This one is a variegated Spathiphyllum, and it's called Domino. So Domino has like white striping to it, if you see those, and mottling too. And the foliage is not as smooth and glossy as the standard variety, but it has a very interesting texture, kind of a little bit of a bumpy texture to it, but it still has that nice midrib and a little bit of wavy edge on the foliage. So that's a nice one. And again, whenever you have a variegated tropical houseplant, that brighter light level should help. So again, I don't mean bright indirect light. I mean, put it into that medium indirect lighting. That'll help with flowering, and it'll help maintain the variegation on the foliage too, okay? Another one that I have here, and this is just a baby. This one is called Platinum Mist, and you can see it on some of these. It's sort of like a silvery overlay. It kind of reminds me of a Chinese evergreen or an aglaonema, but there is sort of whitish, creamy silver striping on these leaves. So that's kind of a new thing with your Peace Lily. So we're starting to find more variegated types and that type of thing as well. And as you can tell, it's very short to begin with, 12 inches or so. But as they start to fill out, it will, of course, get to be a larger plant there, okay? Well, I read somewhere about 60 species of different types of peace lilies out there in the world, which is wonderful. As I mentioned, they're very easy care, tropical foliage plants and flowering plants. They really are beautiful plants, very easy care. Just make sure that you let them, again, slightly wilt, okay, or faint, and before you rewater, and then thoroughly rewater. That's always a good thing to keep in mind. Keep up the humidity, especially in winter. I didn't mention that you can take them outside in the summer if you want to take your tropical plants outside. Sure, they love the summer months, but this one needs to be in very deep shade, okay? Or it will probably burn and you will see some yellow leaves, some burnt edges, and so forth. So do keep that in mind, and enjoy their air purification qualities, especially in winter when we're sort of stuck inside. It's nice to have these plants cleaning our environment. So that's always really good too. Enjoy.